So this presentation is about universal design for instruction and is presented as a professional development for teachers here at Harrisonville High School. And hopefully it will give us some insight into some relatively new research that will help our students and that will make our lives as teachers a lot easier and more effective. So there's something called the UDL framework, and the UDL framework was established. It was an offset of brain research that was developed, and what's many special education teachers started to study a lot of these processes, and really what's come out of the use of universal design for learning is that it's not just for special education students, that this is really good strategies that are useful for all teachers and all students. It makes us the most effective possible. So what is the UDL framework? Well, according to the Universal Design for Learning website, it includes three principles that really just ask you to engage your students, to provide multiple means of presenting instructional content, and to have multiple means of action and expressing when designing and delivering instruction. So those are the three kind of general principles that actually make quite intuitive sense to us as educators. As I said before, it is based on the latest learning sciences. There's a lot of cognitive and neuroscience and human development science and education research that goes into this. Additionally, it helps, as millennial students start to learn and be engaged there, and a lot of schools have moved to that one-to-one initiative. It helps educators to use digital technology and helps them come up with some innovative methods to teach whole classes while personalizing each student's instruction. The key catchphrase in education these days is differentiation, and unfortunately, or fortunately, lots of teachers are like, how do I do this? How do I go about differentiating my classroom? And through the UDL framework, that really does make it significantly easier. There's so many tools and resources that can assist you, and you can use that digital technology to help as you differentiate. And finally, the UDL framework is that it's primarily a blueprint for creating flexible instructional goals and methods, for having materials and assessments that work for everyone. And, instead of just saying that there's only one kind of kid and one kind of learner, it says, oh no, there are, hundreds of types of kids and hundreds of types of learners. And those learners aren't even consistent most of the time. So UDL really does help you as an educator maximize the learning of all of your students. It, you know, the body of knowledge that exists over UDL, both on the CAST website as well as on the Universal Design for Learning website, they help you to create courses that give you a plethora or a myriad of various instructional strategies and things that you could do to shake up that traditional, classroom that we all sat in, the ones that some of us were bored out of our minds. There are things that, yes, you can still incorporate lectures and discussions and visual aids and videos and printed materials, labs and fieldwork. Those are all still important, but UDL helps to modify those experiences so that they are the most effective possible, and students can learn them, and students retain the information, and they're engaged and motivated to learn it. As I said before, there are three, the research about UDL, about the learning differences in the brain. There are three areas, three different networks that exist within the brain. And in UDL circles, they call those the why, the what, and the how of learning. So, with affective networks, the why of learning, that's how learners get engaged and stay motivated. How they're challenged, excited, or interested. These are affective dimensions. And we all have those kids, especially it seems more and more these days, millennial learners who are desperate to know, why do I have to know this? How will this be useful to me for the rest of my life? I I'm bored. I don't want to learn that. So, affective networks are crucial to engaging those learners. Um, Recognition networks, the what of learning. As you can see, the purple part of the brain is highlighted. And this is how we gather facts and categorize what we see, hear, and read. Identifying letters, words, and author styles are recognition tasks. So, this is why it's crucial that we present information and content in different ways. And finally, strategic networks. That's where we would write an essay or where we would do a math problem. That's the way that the part of the brain where students can express what they know, all of the various ways that students can express that knowing. So it kind of focuses on, traditional assessment and traditional performance tasks and how to make those the most effective possible. Well, the first instructional method is for the affective networks that we just talked about. Affect represents a crucial element to learning. They need to be motivated or engaged in a very different way. And there are a lot of sources that can influence individual variation. And those include neurology, culture, personal relevance, subjectivity, background knowledge, along with a lot of other factors. Some learners are highly engaged by spontaneity and novelty, while others are disengaged or frightened by those aspects. And I know to me this was quite shocking because there's no way that I even expected that anybody would be frightened or scared by spontaneity and novelty. I thought that was just how the brain worked. So to me, that to learn about the affective network was quite eye-opening. You really do have to get to know the individual to determine, do they like to work alone? Do they prefer to work with their peers? And so some of this instructional methods that you could use is, well, just let students have choices. Give them menu assignments. Give them ways in which they can construct their work. If they choose to work with a partner, that's cool. If they choose to work by themselves, that's fine as well. Keep it valuable and meaningful. Find real world situations, real world activities that the students deem valuable or meaningful. And of course, always try to help them to feel safe. Decrease those distractions in the classroom and while learning. The second instructional methods for representation, those representation networks. That's when we as teachers realize that learners differ in the way that they perceive and comprehend information. So, people that might be blind or deaf or have learning disabilities or language or cultural differences all might have a different way of approaching the content. So others grasp information more quickly. We sometimes, as old school learners, have learned how to learn information auditorily through lectures or visually through pictures or other printed text, but that's not necessarily going to be all of the learners in our classroom. Some need a lot of different ways to connect with the information and the material and all of the concepts that exist. So just be aware as a teacher that there's not one means of representation that's optimal for all learners, that options, again, as we talked about with the affective networks, is crucial, and those are essential. So how can you as a teacher incorporate or take into account the representation networks? Well, you can customize how information is displayed. Is it displayed on the board? Is it typed? Is it written somewhere? Is it in a certain color? Is it large or bolded? The fonts matter, and you have to give students opportunities to understand it in many different ways. And you have to see that there's not just, you can't just show them a picture and expect that that is going to be acceptable. And especially, you can help students learn vocabulary that they might lack. And this isn't even all students. I mean, if you have a computer, for example, that students particularly that might be ELL or have certain LD issues, they might not have background knowledge about a particular area. And so if you can use a computer to put your cursor over a particular word, then that will help those students provide that background knowledge, and it will give them an explanation of vocabulary. And finally, the third neural network, the strategic network, this pertains to instructional methods. So learners differ in ways that they can navigate a learning environment and express what they know. So, sometimes people have disabilities like cerebral palsy, or other strategic and organizational abilities, and so they go about learning very differently. And some may be able to express themselves well in written text, but not speech, and vice versa. So there should be a lot of areas here as teachers where we allow students means of action and expression. Again, coming up with choices for each of the students to provide options for them. That's essential for learning. So, how can we help? What are some specific strategies? Well, you can make the curriculum as interactive as possible, and you can provide us a lot of different tools and technologies that help learners differ in how they express what they know. So it's not just the traditional assessment. It could be a problem-based unit, or a project-based unit. It could be, something where they are given various ways of demonstrating how they learned that content. So the UDL, there's some non-digital examples of how to make UDL happen, or how to incorporate UDL principles. But just realize that even if that not every student is the same. So while some students might be collaborative, and some students might need self-guided learning, or some students need modeling, that it really does come down to giving them lots of different options so that you can try as a teacher to meet individual needs. Some digital examples from Berg-Stadler include equitable use. She talks about how a professor's website is designed so that it's accessible to everyone, including students who are blind or using text-to-speech software. There's flexibility in use. An example here is like a museum visited as a field trip for a course allows each student to choose to read or listen to a description of the content of display cases. And I've seen actually, even as augmented reality starts to come out, where you can use technological devices to really bring museums alive. There's simple and intuitive use, which are control buttons and science equipments that are labeled with text and symbols that are simple and intuitive. There's perceptible use, which is like a video presentation projected in a course, which includes captions. There's educational software, which provides guidance and background information when the student makes an inappropriate response. And that's crucial, that tolerance for error. Students have to feel safe, and they have to be willing to take risks. Another digital example would be like a low physical effort. Maybe there could be doors to a lecture hall that open automatically for people with a wide variety of physical characteristics. And then size and space for approach and use. A flexible science lab work area has adequate workspace for students left or right-handed, and same for desks and seating positions. And even obese or overweight students might not fit into the regular desks, and that might make them feel uncomfortable. And so that could be a physical access. So a problem, or some problems of UDL in the workplace, according to Brown in 2013, it's important to reduce physical, cognitive, intellectual, and organizational barriers to learning, any of the obstacles that students have. But teachers, we know that with any field that there are still questions that need to be answered. These include things like, how do teachers or districts start implementing UDL? How do they progress in their implementation? What are the most vital components? How can UDL be implemented most effectively? How do we know when schools are ready to implement it, among other things? So all of these questions have to be studied, and we don't necessarily know all of the answers yet. It's still in the learning process, even though it's intuitive and it's shown quite a few results, and there's a lot of positive perception by teachers, by us as my colleagues, and I actually I like it as a design, as a way to design curriculum. There are still a lot of questions. What is the central role of technology in UDL? Well, you can't just give a kid a tool. You can't give them a computer and say that's sufficient. We have to give them, and that's what we've learned this year with our one-to-one initiative, we must provide the support to use the tool effectively. You have to understand how to navigate it. You have to have the opportunity to meet the goal of full participation in the classroom. So it's critical that we help we take into account design considerations. Ensure that there are keyboard commands for a mouse action so that you can use common assistive technologies that depend upon those commands. Anyway, it's important that as teachers and as students who have access to computers, that we teach them how to use the tool, and that we use those tools effectively in order to differentiate, in order to help each individual student get what they need about the material, the skill, and the content. So, 3 examples of a central role of technology in UDL. Well, first of all, UDL helps to develop a myriad of ways to communicate for students. Not everybody is verbal. Not everybody is, some people are alingual. Some people have problems with that communication. And so in order for us to truly know what's going on inside a child's mind, it's crucial that we offer them ways to express themselves. We offer them ways to communicate, ways to get what's happening in their head out of their head, and to tell us that, yes, they truly have mastered that concept. That decreases frustration and helps us all. Another example helps provide tools to complete assignments more effectively. And it really does come down to not just computers. I've seen all sorts of interactive boards, like there was one in the University of Chicago where students could move elements around on the periodic table or combine elements and things would pop up. And so there are all sorts of virtual technologies and software that really is like the wave of the future. I mean, just for an example, I use a website called No Red Ink, and No Red Ink is it offers grammar instruction, but it differentiates the way in which people get that material. So students select their interest and they type in their friends' names and their own names, and that helps them to complete assignments, to learn how to put the comma in the right place. So it's very nice. Another thing that helps teachers and students differentiate and monitor progress. So it does, UDL, it's crucial to have the right technology in place in order to help all of us know what we're learning and how effectively we're learning, and to provide alternatives to that traditional classroom, that sit and get gravestone classroom, which is no longer as effective as it could be. So the potential impact of UDL on student learning in the workplace, it's UDL was designed to increase attention and application by educational researchers and practitioners at K through 12 and post-secondary levels. So you design instruction for each student in your classroom. And I know that sounds really good to us. Um, Regardless of ability, disability, age, reading level, learning style, native language, race, and ethnicity. Regarding students with disabilities, UDI challenges the instructors to go beyond legal compliance to proactively design an accessible course and integrate practice so that other students benefit as well. It can be applied to all aspects of instruction, including class climate, interaction, physical environments and products, delivery methods, informational resources and technology, feedback, and assessment. So it has the potential to really impact learning. And, since it is designed and to support cultural, ethnic, linguistic, and academic diversity, that is at the core of UDL. You can offer options that customize or display the information, options that provide alternatives for auditory information or visual information. You can provide options for language and symbols. When I taught Navajo students, they would have loved to be able to see both English and Navajo and to hear that language, because that would have helped them decode it so much easier and help them gain access to a wide body of information and knowledge that didn't exist before. You could provide options for comprehension, options that highlight critical features of the text and big relationships. Additionally, you can provide options for physical action, ways that you can navigate and access tools. You can provide options for expressive skills and fluencies, options in the media for communication, and tools for composition and problem solving, and scaffolding, practice, and performance. You can provide options for executive functions like goal setting, planning, and strategy development. You can provide options for recruiting interests that like increasing individual choice and autonomy, enhancing relevance and value, options that reduce threat and distractions. You can provide options for sustaining effort and persistence that vary levels of challenge and support, that foster collaboration, or provide options for self-regulation that guide personal goal setting and expectations, that scaffold coping skills and strategies, that develop self-assessment and reflection. So the CAST website is really helpful when it comes to coming up with some tools for you as an educator. And so I really recommend that you go to the CAST website. That's CAST, which is an acronym. One of the tools that you can access is there are leveled texts that help support you as a teacher in the classroom. So I know you're always saying, how do I differentiate these texts? That's so much. Well, the great thing is that the CAST website has those leveled texts available. So depending on students' needs or issues or individual lexile reading levels, those texts are available. Another tool is called the UDL Curriculum Toolkit, and it helps you as you're thinking about your curriculum. It helps you address all of the provisions of UDL. So even though it seems a little scary and a little nerve-wracking in order to design a unit that is based on UDL, the UDL framework, this tool here helps you get started creating flexible educational materials, and it gives you a toolkit to enhance your existing curriculum. So I found it very user-friendly and very insightful. And the third tool on the CAST website that I found particularly helpful was a book builder. And so you would go as a teacher, you would use the book builder to create, share, publish, and read digital books that engage and support diverse learners according to their individual needs, interests, and skills, which is pretty great. So as you see, there's a way to read books, there's a way to create and share, and then there's a way to come up with some other tips and resources to find authorizing ideas on media and much more. So, how could we use all of this to meet the diverse learning needs of our students? Well, we've talked about how we could do that. And, ultimately, there's a difference between us as individuals and us as teachers and how effective we want to be at that. And so, as you see, here are my resources that I used, and I encourage you to use UDL both in your curriculum building and in your classroom. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to be a point person. Thank you.